this is Laura, your tarot doula. I work with women while they give birth. I'm a birth doula and I'm also a tarot reader. So let's talk about birthing and tarot. So I currently have a mama who is 37 weeks, which is, for those of you who don't know, about 3 weeks before the supposed due date. And she is unexpectedly being induced, which means they're giving her medicine to start the birthing process and to get that baby out. And I just want to talk about, what obviously that brings up a lot of feelings in her. It's not what she expected. And, I was thinking to myself, what card do I want to talk about in relation to this? And really, I couldn't think of a better card than the Hanged Man. So the Hanged Man, or sometimes referred to as the tethered one, is really about surrender. It's about giving up what we thought was going to happen and surrendering to what is happening. And it's something that we modern humans are not into. We like to know what's going to happen. We like to predict and control it. And that's what our brains are for. That's what the left brain is for. The fact that the truth is that we can't control most things in life. We try and ignore that fact. That's an inconvenient truth, to quote somebody else. So the Hangman, if we get that in our readings, is really speaking to the need to take what you think is true and just put it aside. Just put it aside. In birth, so often, even if we've prepared, even if we have a doula and we've done our birthing classes, we've done that work of preparing and gathering knowledge and empowering ourselves. And then on the day, what is left? Well, what's left is to surrender. And we have to surrender because if we try and think our way through birth, if we try and plan our way through birth, then the universe laughs, essentially, which is true in pretty much all of life. Birth is just a very extreme example of it. So, when we see this card coming, it can be, it's often not a welcome sight, but there are two ways of going about it. And one is slightly easier than the other. If we can really just be willing, you can't say, okay, I'm just going to surrender. If only it were that easy. That's controlling surrender. And that's, kind of a moot point, essentially, when it comes to surrender, let's face it. So what we can do is be willing. And when we can offer willingness in many different ways. In some religions, it looks like praying. For some people, it just looks like sort of throwing your hands up and saying, okay, I'm taking my hands off the wheel. Whatever it is, it's an internal willingness to apply one's will. It's a sort of ironic move. You're applying your will to something that takes your will away. And in order to do it, really, you have to trust the universe. You have to trust that we live in a loving universe. And so if your concept of higher power, of God, of spirit, of higher intelligence, whatever you want to call it, is a destructive or a mean one, which, let's face it, most of us have in some way, then we need to do that work of being willing to ask ourselves, can I imagine a universe that I can trust? Can I imagine that I could possibly hand over this situation? And in the case of birth, of course, that means that we need to be in an environment where we trust our providers. So if we're going into an induction situation with a hospital that we really don't trust, then that's going to be problematic. Luckily, pretty much all of the places that I go with clients are really wonderful. The place where this woman is going to have her induction is run by a bunch of midwives who I just adore. I'll be having my own baby there soon. And so, it feels to me like, as we talk about it, she is willing to at least say, okay, this is not what I was looking for, but I can pivot and agree that this is the new course of action and this is what's happening, and I cannot fight reality. And so essentially, look at this man. He is not fighting reality, and it's a little tricky to see, but if you can see his head, he's not unhappy in this situation. And I think that's what's amazing about surrender, is when we finally get there, when you can finally surrender, which actually birth is all about. And even if you're getting, quote, the birth of your dreams, at a point in your birth, you will be asked to surrender it all, to surrender control, to surrender your mind, to surrender your idea of everything. That moment is actually a really blissful moment, because we're not fighting anything anymore. And so it's usually just kind of the lead up to surrender that's painful. And like I said, it takes a lot of willingness, and that takes trust in the universe. So it's like surrender, willingness, trust in the universe. And so I'm going to be crossing my fingers for this mama. We'll see how it turns out. You just never know. But she has an amazing supportive team at the hospital. I'm sort of checking in frequently. I'm going in when needed for emotional support and that sort of thing. I'll be there when things get really intense, and she really needs more physical support. And so just surround yourself with a team of people who, no matter what the circumstances, no matter what your birth ends up like, you can surrender to it and say, okay, this is how my baby is choosing to be born. And it's not easy. It never is. It's one of the hardest parts of birth, honestly, surrender. But it can be a blissful moment when it happens. So, Tarot Doula signing off.